everyone.
Hello.
So today I'll be talking about making a cup of coffee. A couple years ago, my dad gave me an AeroPress for my birthday. It's kind of a nice contraption. This is the bottom portion of it. I'd put it in the same category as a French press or like some other fancy coffee maker that you've made. It makes good coffee. It's kind of tricky to use though. Show of hands. Has anyone here made their own cup of coffee? Wow, that's more than half of you guys. I'm sure you all have had the experience of making a cup of coffee and the coffee not coming out quite right, whether it's a little weak or bitter or maybe even sour. And for those who don't drink coffee, think about an experience where you've experimented with a recipe. You've tried it out and it doesn't quite come out right. Today I really want to talk about the process of making a cup of coffee, my normal cup of coffee. But I think there's a lot of other applications too. So to set a baseline, let me talk about the worst cup of coffee I've ever had. I was sitting in an all-you-can-eat buffet in Las Vegas, and I asked for a cup of coffee. It's early in the morning, and I just want a normal pick-me-up. So I asked my waiter, "Hey, can I get a cup of coffee?" And she walks over to this industrial-sized coffee machine. It's full of coffee that's probably been made yesterday. She pours out a cup, she comes over, and she hands it to me. And I bring it up to my face, the steaming liquid and expectations of bitter coffee, and it's sour. Coffee is not supposed to be sour. Sure, coffee comes from the coffee bean or the coffee berry, and berries can be sour. But coffee's not supposed to be mouth-puckering sour. So back to this AeroPress. I've made it a few times when I first got it, and when I made it, it was sour. Coffee's not supposed to be sour. So the process that I use to make coffee that's not sour is to do it once, look it over, and do it again. Okay, so how do you make coffee with an AeroPress? First, you read the instructions, like any reasonable person does. So what this is actually is, this bottom piece is kind of like a filter. You have this paper filter, you put it down, you screw it onto a cylindrical piece that's not pictured here. You'll take a scoop of coffee. You'll look for finely ground coffee because you're making somewhat of an espresso. You take water, you boil it, and you make sure that the water is 176 degrees Fahrenheit or 80 degrees Celsius. And you pour it up to this line that says 2, because 2 is the number I want. Then you stir for 10 seconds, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 10. And then you take this plunger and you plunge it into this container for 20 to 40 seconds, or however long you can put up with it. And out comes a thick coffee brew. It's like espresso, but it's not espresso because it's not pushed through a machine where you're putting very hot water to very fine grinds for a short amount of time. But it's pretty thick, and I add water to it to make an Americano. So take a sip, and yeah, I screwed it up. It's sour. I keep making sour coffee. And so this is the point where you've done it once, and you're trying to figure out why it didn't come out the way you wanted it to. So what you do is you go to Google and you type in, "Why is my coffee coming out sour?" And I'll save you the results. And I've already kind of put it down into a small form. Coffee is sour if you under-extract it. And you can screw up coffee in 3 ways. 1, the grind can be too coarse or too fine. The water can be too hot or too cold. Or the brewing time could be too short or too long. So I followed the instructions. I think the brewing time's fine. I heated up the water to, I don't know what it was actually. It went boiling, and I waited for it to stop making a noise. And when it stops making a noise, it's roughly the right temperature. Finally, the grind. Very inexperienced with coffee. I grinded my own coffee, and I wasn't really sure whether the coffee I made was good enough. So I looked up online. What you should do is 5 pulses, 1 second each, and this gives you a very consistent grind. You can kind of see what it looks like. So cool. The grinds are actually smaller than they were before. So let's do it again. So I take a new filter, I put it in, I twist it on, pour in my coffee grinds, I pour in hot water, stir for 10 seconds, plunge for 20 to 40 seconds, add some water, taste it, and it's okay. This is like my normal cup of Joe. This is what I expect. Not sour coffee, but just kind of a good coffee. Whatever good is to you. So this process of doing it once, looking it over, and doing it again is something that I kind of do in a lot of different places, not just coffee. Although I've made this coffee now over 100 times, and it's come out consistent. It's not sour. It's not good. It's not very fancy or maybe even particularly good, but it's consistent, and it's not sour. So yeah, I like doing this in all sorts of different ways. I think researching about something, kind of understanding what you're doing, and then being able to control the different variables when you're making something is very, it's a nice feeling. So I appreciate the normal cup of coffee, and I hope you guys, if you want, can make your own brew too. Thank you.